All right, hello and welcome everybody. So we are going to look into a very specific topic today for Azure. Let me, I don't know why, but it's a little hard for me to always navigate to this page, which is the uh, sort of the home page of the Azure AZ-104 certificate. All right, so in the last videos, we went through the prerequisites and a little bit of identities and governance. Today, we're looking into the third topic, implement and manage storage. Now, um, some of these videos are super random. As you may have noticed, if you go to one, uh, say, module or learning path, this is 4.5 hours, almost 5 hours. There's a lot of in-depth topics which you have to basically cover. I did not make videos on all these topics. um, I'm making videos as I go, uh, and as time and mood permits. Now, so today we're looking into the implement and manage storage in Azure. Um we're gonna be looking into configuring storage accounts. Uh, there's more to this module, but we will not be covering all that today. Maybe in future at some point. But today we are looking into configuring storage accounts. So basically, I'm not sure why the uh, Microsoft learning path is set up like this, where it does not take you to introductory titles and stuff. So it doesn't say uh, introduction to storage accounts and stuff like that. Uh, maybe it's because that's just how the examination is set up. Um, we just trust the process, trust the certificate, and follow it. So we are going to learn to implement and manage storage in Azure. As you go through this, it gives you the introduction for. So obviously you learn what you're learning. So you cannot just dive into, even though this is the first topic, you don't just dive into the configure storage accounts module. It does give you introduction on what you're learning, so you won't just jump into configuration. You while you do that as you go, uh, you do learn from basics of what these topics are. So let's jump in, I guess. uh, Introduction. What is Azure storage? So Microsoft's cloud storage solution for modern data storage scenarios. And this explains is in a good way. This is just an example. So suppose you work for a large e-commerce company, and that which needs to store and serve big number of product images. And if a company needs a scalable and reliable solution, so you have to make sure what you're reading. Okay, so scalable, reliable, that can handle high traffic and ensure data durability. So these are basically, I guess, requirements or key points to note. And they want to quickly restore data if there's no outage. So when you go through this entire module, this is what we are going to cover. We're going to learn how to configure storage accounts and what type of storage accounts do we need in this scenario. So large e-commerce company, they need to store product images, and they want a scalable, reliable solution. So now we're going to be covering all these little, excuse me, topics, as we, not topics, but I mean, these are separate topics on their own. So we were going to cover what all these means. Um, and the model covers topics is implementing. Okay, so this is basically a quick introduction on what Azure Storage means and what it does. I am looking into another screen to kind of pull up my notes. Okay, so implement Azure Storage, the second topic. Uh, Azure Storage is Microsoft's cloud storage solution for modern data storage scenarios. Azure Storage offers a massively scalable object store for data object. Uh, Provides a file system for cloud and messaging store for reliable messaging and a NoSQL store. We're going to be learning all these in details. This is just an overview of what Azure Storage basically is. Things to know about Azure Storage. I am skimming through this. I'm not reading through this. I'm not reading everything in this topic. I'm gonna go through. I have already went through these topics before on my own. So in my other videos, I've already shown how to log into the Learn portal. It's completely free, and you should be able to get this access on your own. So you have access to this. You should be able to read through everything in detail if you're preparing for this certificate, and even if you're just curious about what the certificate teaches you, right? So the Azure administrator. Uh, okay, so I'm just gonna basically cover the important points that I think are important to cover. But let me know if there's anything that I miss. Uh, Obviously, I'm not certified at this point, so I'm uh, learning as I go and documenting my journey. So things to know about Azure storage. You can think of Azure storage as supporting structured data. So three types of categories of data we get: structured, non-structured, and virtual machine data. The virtual machine data is when Azure managed disks is used. When you create a virtual machine in Azure, it uses it uses Azure managed disks, um, and they store database files, website static content, or custom application code. Um, and the number of data disks you add that you can add depends on the virtual machine size. So whatever storage you give to the virtual machines, that storage is part of is one of the categories for Azure storage. Uh, Unstructured data. What kind of unstructured data can you? What is unstructured data? It's least organized, and it's also called non-relational. Now, what does it mean? Unstructured data can be used by using Azure Blob storage, Azure Data Lake storage. We will learn all this in detail in the after topics. So this is basically telling us what functionality of what type of Azure storage is used to save unstructured data. But let's see what it is first. So what is an unstructured data, and what does it even mean? That prefer the lacks predefined format or schema. Uh, so okay, so this means any type of data that is not in table format, organized. That's unstructured data. Um Structured data is called relational format. Uses database table with rows, columns, and keys. So this is basically what the difference is. And Azure table storage, Cosmos DB, all these are used to store structured data. What are the things to consider when we use Azure storage? So when we're setting up an Azure storage account for our company, uh, these are the things we keep in mind. This is basically what defines. These are the things you keep in mind before making a judgment on what type of storage account you need and what's the requirement. So just like how we went through the first question, actually, let's go to the considerations first, and then we can go to the first question that we had, or the scenario that we had. Consider durability and availability. So Azure storage is durable and highly available. What does it mean? Redundancy ensures your data is safe during hardware failures. You can replicate your data in different locations, and due to that, it's always highly available if a storage happens. Uh, so durability and availability. Durability means redundancy. I'm sorry, I'm learning this as I go. Your storage is durable and highly available. So redundancy ensures your data is safe. Okay, so safety. Durability means redundancy, transit hardware failure. So when a hardware failure happens, um, Azure Storage makes sure that your data is highly durable and it's available. What does availability mean? In 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 cases of a local catastrophe or natural disaster, your data is replicated across different data centers and regions, um, and that's why it's always highly available. Secure access uh, encrypts all data. So Azure Storage encrypts all data, so that's why it's usually it's always secure. Um, Scalability, designed to be massively scalable to meet the data storage and performance need of the modern application. So pretty self-explanatory. I have to pretty self-explanatory. Consider manageability. So handles hardware maintenance. Oh yeah, okay. So easily manageable. Not easily, but provides you. You have to consider, right? Yeah. So Azure provides you the storage account with, oh, makes it easy for you, the management. Now consider data accessibility. Data in Azure storage is accessible. I'm so sorry. I keep on getting distracted because I feel there's noise outside. Um, Data accessibility. So I apologize. I kind of lost track of my thought after scalability. Consider manageability. Microsoft Azure handles hardware maintenance, updates, and critical issues for you. Um, okay. Data accessibility. Data in Azure storage is accessible for anywhere in the world. Over, so you can browse the data. You can use software development kits. You can use these applications or yeah, tools, and make API calls. So you can basically access data using um, all this. That's the ability Azure provides you. Next topic: explore Azure storage services. So, what type of storage services does Azure provide? Four different type of storage services. Um, container storage is also called blob storage, which is um, binary large objects. Uh, Table, queue, and files. So these type of storage accounts you can get. Now we're gonna understand what type of account stores what type of data. Blob storage, optimized for storing massive amounts of unstructured or non-relational data. So we probably learned earlier what is unstructured and non-relational data. Um, so any type of images, documents, files, video, audio, data for backup, data for analysis. Objects in blob storage can be accessed. So when you're subscribed to blob storage, if you have Azure blob storage, uh, these are the type of this is the type of data you can save, and it can be accessed through again HTTP, TTPS browsers, um, URLs, API, PowerShell, CLI. So you can access that data in blob storage through all this. Azure files. So we learned the first one, containers and containers slash blobs files, .txt, .exe. So Azure files enables you to set up highly available network file shares using server message protocol. This is a little geeky and technical, so of course you can navigate to this link and learn in detail what it is, um, through the official documentation page. Um, but you're just gonna have to remember what type of protocol the Azure Files storage uses. So what is Azure Files? Um, Many on-prem applications use file shares. This feature makes it easier to migrate those applications that share Azure. Um, okay, so many on-prem applications currently they use file shares, and this feature makes it easier to migrate those applications that share data to Azure. If you mount the file share to the same drive letter that the on-prem application uses, the part of your application that accesses that file share should work with minimal, if any, changes. So if you have an on-prem app which is using file share, and file shares are basically, uh, let me simplify it for you even more. uh, Centralized collection of digital files on a network through a protocol that enables file operations like opening, reading, and deleting. So that's what file sharing. I'm sorry, I was a little fast, but that is what Azure File Share basically does. Uh, Especially created for uh, for use cases where the application is on-prem and is using file share. So you can move that over to Azure, um, and replicate that in Azure, which is much more easier. Configuration files can be stored on file share and accessed from multiple virtual machines. Oh, right, yeah. So multiple virtual machines can share the same files with both read and write access. Usually, if you have multiple different virtual machines, um, I I think you cannot. Yeah, you there's it's separate virtual machines, so you're not able to uh, share files in between. Um, Usually in usual cases, but it looks like with Azure files, you are able to. And if I'm wrong, let me know. I'll correct myself. And then you get the credentials to be able to access that file share. So I think this relates to how in my previous companies, um, there is a server storage, and a network uh, storage that is being shared within the company, and access is given to selected people. And I think that's what this is referring to. If you um, go with Azure. Okay, moving forward. Azure Queue. So we covered container blob. Files is basically directories. So .txt, .exe, anything to do with, I guess, uh, that type of file is stored using directories. Azure Queue storage is used to store and retrieve messages, queue messages up to 64 KB in size. And a queue can contain, queues are stored to use stored list of messages to process asynchronously. Uh, I only read through this, but I know we would understand this line more in details when you consider a scenario with an example. So you want your customers to be able to upload pictures, and you want to create thumbnails for each picture. You could have your customer wait for you to create the thumbnails while uploading the pictures. So you want your customers to be able to upload pictures, and you want to create thumbnails for each picture. uh, you could have your customer wait for you to create thumbnails while uploading the pictures. An alternative is to use a queue. When a customer finishes the upload, you can write a message to the queue. Then you can use an Azure function to retrieve the message from the queue and create the thumbnail. Each of the processing parts can be scaled separately, which gives you more control when tuning the configuration. When a customer finishes the upload, you can write a message to the queue. Then you can use an Azure function. So you write a message to the queue, and then Azure function retrieves that message, creates the thumbnail. It doesn't create the thumbnail, but maybe it does. Uh, and all that you can scale separately and I guess manage separately. And that's where the queue storage comes in. So it looks like you can queue messages, and the queues processes. What does it even uh, queue? So we do sometimes large number of messages function as messaging queue. Imagine small notes containing information or instructions. These are the messages in Azure. Include as waiting in line on your mailbox where these messages are stored. You can create multiple queues within your Azure storage account, each serving a specific purpose. So there's a sender queue. a container that holds messages. Next, you can send message to the queue using Azure SDK. Each message can be precisely precise when the message in queue. It can be retrieved by any part of your application that has access to that queue. Okay, it looks like you can send messages to a queue, and using that queue, and then that message can be used, or that, yeah, by any application that has access to that queue. Interesting. And the last one is Azure Table. Non-relational data, also known as NoSQL data, uh, provides a key attribute store with a schema-less design. Now, what does it even mean? Um, so think, I was able to chat GPT this earlier, and so it says, think of it like an Excel sheet in the cloud. So it's almost like an Excel sheet with tables and rows, but there are no strict rules. What does that mean? Um, so copy paste. Can I paste this here? No. I'm gonna pull up quickly. So it basically means you can have a row one with ID, name, department. Row two can be ID, name, favorite toy. It doesn't have to be department. It doesn't have to follow a set of rule. Um, whoa, I think I moved. There you go. So in plain words, Azure Table Storage is like a giant flexible spreadsheet in the cloud, and stores non-relational data. So it uses key key pair, key attribute, key attribute store. Mm. Things to consider when choosing Azure storage services. So these are basically use cases of different type of storage accounts that we use. Blob storage. Why would you consider getting a blob storage? We already saw the examples, but this is uh, a generalized use case um, for blob storage for storing massive amounts of unstructured data. So as we saw, any type of audio, video, any type of file in big amounts, you can use blob storage to store. Can be accessed through HTTP, HTTPS. Is idea of serving data directly to browser, streaming data, and storing data for backup and restore. So if you have a data that's serving out directly to the browser, uh, anything that's streaming, and backup and restore for your huge amount of data. So keep in mind high availability. If you want a storage with high availability, you want to go with Azure Files. Um, if your focus is on this when it comes to storage, on-premise apps use file shares for easy migration. By using Azure Files, all users can access shared data and tools. Storage account credentials provide file share authentication. Um, Consider storage for messages. So Azure Queue Storage. If you need a storage for your messages, well, this is where you go. Uh, Store large number of messages. Queue storage is commonly used to create a backlog of work to process asynchronously. And if you need a storage for structured data, then you want to go with the table storage. Ideal for storing structured, non-relational data. Uh, because Azure Storage Table is part of Cosmos DB, you have access to fully managed NoSQL database service for modern app development. This, excuse me. This is a video of explaining containers is colloquially used the same thing basically. So I didn't wanna. play a video of somebody doing the same thing I'm doing with you guys. Storage account types, standard and premium. So when you actually go to buy Azure storage, uh, you get
for the general users of an environment, and in fact, the large majority of scenarios, I would recommend picking a standard general purpose version 2 storage account.
there you go. So generally, this is the one that is mostly being used on a more general case. So everything we learned about in the last few minutes, any all type of storage accounts. Um, if you get the standard general purpose, if you subscribe to this, then you get, I guess, all these type of storage accounts. But there's also premium storage accounts for very specific purposes. So premium blobs, premium file shares, premium page blocks, and these are for high level enterprise use cases. They obviously cost more. And what's the difference? So I think standard are backed by HDDs, so lower cost per GB. Uh, but premium is by SSD. So premium needs to be, premium, faster, better, and this is why. So offers consistent low latency performance. Basically explaining the same thing that we just did. Standard storage used for most scenarios, including this blob, file shares, queue, tables, and disks. Premium blob is for application with high transaction rates. Use premium blobs if you work with smaller objects or require consistently low storage latency. The storage is designed to scale with your applications. So it's designed in a way where you can scale it with your application. If your application grows, or if your application grows or lessens, you can scale it accordingly. Uh, Premium file shares recommended for high enterprise or high performance scale applications. Use premium file shares if you require support for both server message block and NFS file shares. So enterprise or high performance scale applications, premium file share. Um, Premium page blobs. Page blobs only. Page blobs are ideal for storing index based and sparse data such as operating systems. I did not understand what this means. Premium page blobs. So random read-write operations, making them ideal for backing Azure virtual machine. Optimized for random read-write operations. Oh, okay. So premium page blobs uses the is larger sequential data for random access. Okay. Okay. So new day, same topic. We are in the Azure 104 implement and manage storage, and we're learning what type of replication strategies does Azure provide. Um, as we all know, Azure storage account is always, oh, well, we might not. Um, so always replicated to ensure durability and high availability. So pretty self-explanatory. Azure always provides replication is always there, to make sure that your app is um, or your data is durable and highly available. Um, and obviously, you need the replication to protect from planned and unplanned events. Um, from hardware failure to network failure, power outages, natural disasters. In all those cases, you can replicate your data. You can replicate it. You can the minimum replication that Azure provides is three three copies in the same data center. So, and it's called locally redundant storage. We're gonna learn this in detail as we go. For now, just keep in mind that the minimum backup or replication of data that Azure provides is three copies in the same data center. You have to opt in for this at the minimum, and then you get replication services within the same zone, um, across different regions. So if you are already learning 104, then you probably have also gone through the AZ 900 course, and that's I think there you learn what um, zones are. So what are availability zones, regions, and then there's going to be geo redundant storage. So across um different what is it called, regions. Yeah, so across different regions. Now let's see what they're talking about. So um, like I mentioned earlier, locally redundant storage is multiple copies in the same data center. So you have one region, one data center, um, and then copies always has to be under a storage account, obviously. Um so offers least durability compared to other strategies. Uh, if this is all you need, then that's all you need to opt in for. Um, so depending on your app and your data, obviously, if you so if a data center level disaster occurs, such as fire or flooding, or replicas might be lost or unrecoverable. So just keep in mind that since it's going to be saved in one data center, if if a bigger disaster happens, then you can lose all copies of your data. But despite its limitations, LRS, locally redundant storage, can be appropriate in several scenarios. Uh, Application stores data that can be easily reconstructed if data loss occurs. Your data is constantly changing, like in a live feed, or storing the data isn't essential. So when your application is restricted to replicating data only within a location due to data governance requirements. So in these scenarios, what does this mean? Your application stores data that can be easily reconstructed if data loss occurs. So okay, if you have an application where you don't like the data is constantly changing, and you don't need to keep copy of the same data uh, because the data changes. It's okay if you lose the older copy of the data. So there are cases like that, and you can opt in for LRS if that's the case. Uh, Pretty much the same thing. So if you're in a live feed, or if storing the data isn't essential, then LRS. And your application is restricted to replicating data only within a location due to God. And there are cases like this. Data governance requirements. So the company requires you to only store your data, or your organization requires you to only store your data within one data center, and it cannot be stored within multiple regions or even locations or zones, then that's what uh, you can use the LRS for. Uh, Zone redundant storage. This is same region but different zones. That means different data centers. So your data is still replicated within the same region, but across different. I couldn't even sneeze. Does that happen to you guys too? When you get aware of your sneeze and you just don't sneeze. ZRS. So one primary region, multiple availability zones, multiple data centers, and within those data centers, uh, you can use the same storage account but different copies. So your data is stored within the same region, but it's still under different data centers. So in cases of, I guess, outages, um, you know, so they all get their own separate utilities, separate networking capabilities. So you have multiple backups in multiple regions. So even two of those goes down for some reason, if two data centers goes down, if for some reason, then you always have the third copy. Uh, it's rare that happens. Zone redundant storage synchronously replicates your data across. So synchronously, there is an asynchronously and then there's a synchronously. So make sure you're uh, aware of what it is. Different at the same time, not at the same time. So I just wanted to make sure that synchronous means you're copying your data at the same time you're inputting the data. I think, um, but it surely means that it copies over your data in all three data centers at the same time. Uh, doesn't have to be right away when you input the data. I can take that back because I'm sure there's probably uh, scheduling and stuff like that where you can do uh, which will sync the data over as per you as per the user. uh, but it's not asynchronous, so it's not like it copies over from 1 to 2 and then after a while it copies over to 2 to 3. It's not like that. Okay, so physically separate from the others, resides in its own availability zone, each availability zone, and the ZRS cluster. So zone redundant storage cluster within it is autonomous, separate utilities and network abilities. Um, Means you can access and manage your data if zone becomes unavailable. Excellent performance and low latency because there's multiple copies, right? 3 copies. Uh, isn't currently available in our region, so you have to also see if it's available in your region or the region you select. Changing to ZRS from another data replication option requires the physical data movement from a single storage. So if you want to change the replication option from any of the other two ZRS, then you have to make sure that then it requires physical data movement, moving of the hard drives and moving of the storages physically from single storage stamp to multiple stamps within a region. Geo-redundant storage. So we learned LRS and ZRS so far, and we're expanding to geo-redundant storage now. Um, there are use cases for big applications where multiple regions are involved uh, for replicating the data. Same storage account, obviously different data centers, um, and 3 copies in one region. So you still get the LRS. So one locally redundant storage, you get one storage account, one server rack or server, 3 copies in the same server, same data center, same server, 3 copies. Uh, Hundreds of miles away from the primary location of the source data. So both regions are hundreds of miles away uh, from the primary source data. So primary, and so there's always a primary region and there's a secondary region, right? So where you put the data and then where the data replicates over. Provide at least 99.9999999999999% 69 percent durability when your storage account SGR is enabled. So obviously, if you have a regional outage, then your data is available, or a disaster that happens in a region, then your data is still available in another region. Uh, I, I said in the beginning that big apps require this. Generally, they do, but I don't think it's only big apps or data like that. But you can have apps as long as, so it depends on your data, I think, and what kind of data storage you need and the importance of your data, I guess. That's when you choose what type of storage you need, and also uh, your use case. I keep on saying this, but your use case. Okay. So you get, if you choose GRS, you get two options. You can get the GRS option, and you can get the RA GRS. Let's see what that is. GRS is your data to another data center in a secondary region, which we just saw. Uh, the data is available to be read only if Microsoft initiates a failover from primary to secondary region. And RAGRS is based on GRS, but read only from secondary region. With RAGRS, you can read from the secondary region regardless of whether Microsoft initiates a failover from primary to a secondary. Ah, okay. So let's understand what they're trying to say here. GRS replicates your data from to another data center in the secondary region, and the data is available for read only if in case of an outage in your primary region. Um, when the replication starts, Microsoft initiates the failover to secondary region, uh, and at that time, the data is available to be read only. While in RAGRS, the data is always available as a read only from the secondary region if you choose to see your data, it looks like. whether regardless of whether Microsoft initiates the failover or not. Now, how does this work on a micro level? So for storage account with GARS or RAGRS enabled, all data is first replicated within the locally redundant storage. Um, an update is first committed to the primary location and replicated by using LRS. So by using LRS, so the if you choose to go with RGRS, the data is first replicated within LRS, and then an update is first committed to the primary location and replicated by using LRS. So you give your data, the data gets copied over as in locally redundant storage, uh, and then an update copies it over to the primary location. Oh, okay. Update is first committed to the primary location. So when the data comes, it's committed to the primary location first and replicated to LRS first. So first three copies is made within LRS and in the primary region, and that's what that's how GRS is set up to be prioritized. Update is then replicated asynchronously to the secondary region, which we just went through before, which we just read earlier. Data in the secondary region uses LRS as well. So secondary region also uses LRS. Both primary and secondary regions, both primary and secondary regions manage replications across separate fault domains. Primary and secondary regions manage applications across separate fault domains and upgrade domains within a storage scale unit. What is a storage scale unit? As basically replication unit within the data center. Replication at this point is provided by LRS. Okay. What is GZRS? Oh, there's also a GZRS, RAGRS. Oh, there's one of two. So LRS, ZRS, GRS, RAGRS, and there is a GZRS. Let's see what this is all about. So two regions, primary and secondary. Sorry, I'm trying to still wrap my head around the GZRS. I know I said before that I went through this in the past. Sometimes I have to refresh myself too. Okay, so separate regions, uh, zone redundant storage, separate availability zones, and locally redundant storage using your application. High availability of zone redundant storage with protection from regional outages. So this, I'm wondering what would be the use case for this, but I'm pretty sure there are. Let's try to understand this on a technical level though. Okay, so high availability of zone redundant storage, so multiple zones, protection from regional outages as provided by geo redundant storage. Okay, so regional outages. Hmm. If you do have regional outage, okay, ZRS. So in case of ZRS, where you have one region, multiple availability zones, and your data is copied over across multiple availability zones, then there's three copies, but it's all saved in one region. So in case of an outage, in if in case of a regional outage here, your data is just all gone. So that's why they added the geo and added another secondary region, you know, different region, different data center using local redundant. So one storage um, shelf or server, multiple copies. So in case of a regional outage, you can always have one copy saved over in a separate secondary region, and they use geo replication strategy. It looks like that's what it's called. Okay, that took a while to understand. Replicated across three availability zones in the primary region, and also replicated to a secondary geographic region from another. So what we just went through. You can continue to read and write data if an availability zone becomes unavailable or unrecoverable. Okay, data is also durable during a complete regional outage. Makes sense. During a disaster, GZRS is designed to prove at least 69% durability of objects in a given year. Offers same scalability targets as local redundant storage. So okay, so you can scale LRS, ZRS, GRS, and so locally redundant storage, zone redundant storage, geo redundant storage, read only, read access, zero redundant storage, and yeah. So all these are can be scalable, can be scaled. So if your app or data grows or lessens, yeah, you can move it accordingly. You can optionally enable read access to data in the secondary region with read access geo zone redundant storage. So you combine GZRS with read access, and so it looks like it uses the same replication stat. It uses the same. What was it? Microsoft initiates a failover. So it looks like this is only available when there is a failover, and other than that, your data is always available there. But you can opt in for RA GZRS, where you get the read access to your data all the time. Optionally enable read access to data in the secondary region. PIP. Microsoft recommends uses GZRS that requires consistency, durability, high availability, excellent performance, resilience for disaster recovery. So if these are your requirements, then Microsoft recommends you go with the geo zone redundant strategy storage. I apologize. Things to consider when choosing replication strategies. So go through this chart, um, because this is a little technical and you might want to wrap your head around this on a bird's eye level. Access storage. The object you store in Azure Storage has unique URL address. Storage account name forms the subdomain portion of your URL address. Combination of the subdomain and domain name, which is specific to each service, forms an endpoint for your storage account. If your storage account name is my storage account, default endpoints are formed as below. So container service is my storage account dot blob core Windows net, table services, table, queue, and file. So you can use URLs to access an object in your storage account. That's what they're basically trying to say. And you can configure custom domains to access blob data in your Azure storage account. If you map a custom domain to the blob, your users can use that domain to access blob data into it. So you can create a domain like this, and then you get that URL, and your users can access that access. Your users can access that data in uh, blob. And then there is a direct mapping. What does that do? That you enable a custom domain for a subdomain to an Azure storage account. So if you have a domain and then a subdomain underneath, you can use direct mapping. CNAME record that points from the subdomain to the Azure. So you and then it goes deeper. How is a subdomain mapped? So blobs.contoso.com, that's the subdomain storage account. So your storage account's name, blob.corewindows.net, but then you also use the CNAME record, which is contoso blobs dot blob. Okay. Secure storage endpoints. This is the last topic for learning storage accounts. Each Azure service requires certain steps to configure the service endpoints and restrict network access. To access these settings, you use the firewall and virtual network settings. So you go to your account and then networking. Let me see if I'm able to show you. My keyboard is right behind my camera stand, so I'm having a actually make it easier and move my keyboard. I'm not the smartest. Okay, so what are they saying? Firewall and virtual network settings in your storage account. Do we have a test storage account that I created at any point? Storage accounts, I don't. Okay. Do I still see the setting? Security and networking. I guess you have to go within a create a storage account first. You can add virtual networks. So maybe from networking we can add a virtual network. No, I cannot. I guess I have to go through all this and create a storage account. So fill all this up. Next. Can I select that? Can I keep everything default? Maybe test storage account. Standard. Keep it LRS. Let's create one. And then you go to the setting, you add the virtual network that should have access to the service for the account. The settings restrict Okay. Provide the base URL for any blob, queue, table, or file object in Azure. I'm sorry, I was thinking if this account has been created. Validation failed, view error details. Oh, it has to be a unique name. Right. Anyway, we are out of time today, so we won't be testing this. But I, my goal was not to even create this and go through the virtual network setting, but uh, just kind of wanted to show how it works in practical. Let's go further. You add the virtual networks that should have access to the service. Okay, so we add the virtual network, enable from all networks, and then you get the custom domain settings. So right now it's enabled for everything. The service endpoints provide base URL for any blob. Uses base URL to construct the address of any given resource. Okay, so when you go to the endpoints in your storage account, and you get base URLs for the file service, blob service, queue service, and all those separate services. You can use the URL to lock in, and then you can lock it down um, to be used on the network that's uh, on the virtual network that your company or team is using. Things to know about configuring service endpoints. There are some points to consider about configuring service access. Things to know about configuring service endpoints. We're able to configure these two. Interesting. I didn't know. You can configure the service to allow. Okay, so you can only allow access to one or more public IP ranges. Okay. Subnets and virtual networks must exist in the same region or region pair. Okay. So obviously, when you as your storage account, when you make those changes in the settings, it gives you option to select and put these in select the region, but you have to make sure that you put it in the same region. Be sure to test and verify the endpoint limits access as expected. Okay, these are service endpoints, it looks like. And I don't think you can configure it, but you can configure it to allow access for one or more public IP ranges. And the settings for the subnets and the virtual networks and all that must be in the same region um, as your storage account. All right. There was a lot of big words, but let's test ourselves. I probably have already. I'm not sure if I passed or failed. Snap, I'm out of time though. Okay, see you next time.